Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study of the entire Bible. Currently, we are in Job chapter 21. And we're kind of nearing the end. As I said, we started with Job's last, this is his last plea, as it were. And he is really trying to justify, or when I say justify, he's trying to get his friends to see his point. And God is using this, I think, to show us, to me, a lot of things. One, don't trust man. If you think that people, I'm speaking in general, and so I certainly can't say it all, but if you think that people are going to be compassionate to you, in general they won't. Now some will. I've learned a long time ago, it is fruitless trying when people have their minds made up. Excuse me, to try to plead your case, to try to justify yourself, and it just won't work. For example, Job's friends had already determined his guilt, and that's how they saw Job, and nothing he did, nothing he could say, could convince them. So at some point, it becomes kind of fruitless to try to get people to see your point of view. If they've determined that you're wrong, you're evil, you're bad, if they determine that, it's kind of fruitless to try to get people to see your point. So as we've been kind of going through this discourse back and forth right here, we see this it illustrates to me a very human condition. That I've been through it, where I've tried to get people. I said this before, and I told this testimony before. My first wife passed away of cancer when both of us, we were 28. I was 28, she was 28. We had 4 small children. And she died on a Friday. That Saturday, some friends of mine, and I'm going to say who I thought were friends, we went together to make funeral arrangements. And during that time, I was a very arrogant, cocky person. When I say that, I look back now, say, well, had someone spoken to me, would I have changed? Probably not, because I was too so self-confident in my knowledge. Well, what I didn't know about myself is that wisdom was not justified by any children I had, meaning my life was a mess. And so my first wife passed away. That was one of the signs my life was a mess. But it was interesting how we had left the church, but we kind of stayed friends with the pastor. He was there when he was trying to make arrangements. He never got over, I guess he was always sort of angry that I left his church. And from time to time he showed it. But in this case, when my first wife passed away, which at the time, I want to say close to a year, maybe. Close to a year. And, but when it happened, we're sitting in the room. And he turns to me and just starts going in on me. And I thought, wait a minute, he just started berating me, and it all had to do with kind of the arrangements. Well, the arrangements was I didn't have any money to pay for the funeral. The arrangement was my wife passed away. And he really didn't show any compassion for that. He took the opportunity to vent his anger. So what I'm saying is that was one of the kind of biggest surprise for me. Now at the time I didn't pay attention because my thoughts were on my wife just literally passed away the night before, and I was literally sitting here not believing that I'm actually making arrangements for her funeral. But I think about it now, of course, and I think, man, that was kind of interesting. So Job again is trying to plead his case. Chapter 24, he is, he's again attempting to make a case. Now, in some cases too, you're going to see that he slips. I think he slips over into kind of pointing to himself too much and not seeing the sovereignty of God. He will see that. So chapter 24 verse 1 says, "Why does the Almighty not reserve times for judgment? Why do those who know him never see his days?" Meaning for judgment. Now he's going to complain about that. As I said, when you're suffering, it's like you always kind of think that you're on an island alone. That's right. Now, meaning he's looking at how he has suffered, and he's going to make his case, but then he's going to say, well, why do the wicked get away with everything? Why do the wicked? How come they don't suffer, right? That's his point. Verse 2, the wicked displace boundary markers, they steal a flock and provide pastures for, they drive away the donkeys owned by the fatherless and take the widow's ox as collateral. They push the needy off the road, the poor of the land are forced into hiding. Like wild donkeys in the desert, the poor go out to their tasks of the foraging for food. The wilderness provide nourishment for their children. They gather their fodder in the field and glean the vineyards of the wicked. Without clothing, they spend the night naked, having no covering against the odds. Drenched by the mountain range, they huddle against the rocks, shelter. The fatherless infant is snatched from the breast. The nursing child of the poor is seized as collateral. Without clothing, they wander about naked and carry sheaves, but go hungry. Verse 11. They crush olives in their press. They tread the winepress, but go thirsty. From the city, men groan. The mortality wounded cry for help. Yet God pays no attention to this crime. Now, the idea here, we ask these questions all the time, right? Why does it seem like that the wicked get away with stuff? I mean, you think about this. I remember seeing some of the evil soldiers in Germany, Nazi Germany, who got away with atrocities. They fled. Some of them fled to South America. And then some of them lived their lives out. Now, when they were caught, a lot of times they were like 89, 90. That was like they called it the end of their life. I think about the woman who was responsible for Emmett Till's death. And this was back in 1955, remember? She went on to live her life. She's alive to this day. People want her, they want her arrested, things like that. But my point is, she's old right now. So the question is, does God see the wicked? Now, Job is asking this question from the perspective of, I'm living right. And look what happened to me. And now he's saying, well, look at all the wicked who are doing all of these things, and they are just getting away with all of their wickedness. He says God pays no attention to this crime. First of all, whenever you make a statement like this, let me just say this. You don't know what God is doing and what he's not doing. And when you compare yourself with that, in other words, when you compare yourself with how wicked someone is, that in itself is first and foremost foolish. When we see sin the way God sees sin, that starting point shades a whole lot of light on a whole lot of stuff. And think about this too, that from Job's perspective as we are reading this, remember, he hasn't seen the end yet. Secondly, he doesn't know why he is suffering. His assessment, remember, is a lack of knowledge. He doesn't know why he suffered. And by the way, what he is talking about, he can't weigh against, because he's saying that God is not paying attention to the wicked. Well, the reality is that his suffering had nothing to do with the wicked. His suffering had nothing to do with how bad or how good he is in that respect. So verse 13 says, the wicked are those who rebel against the light. They do not recognize its ways or stay on its paths. The murderer rises at dawn to kill the poor and the needy, and by night he becomes a thief. The adulterous eye watches the twilight, thinking no eye will see him. He covers his face in the dark. They break into houses. By day they lock themselves in, never experiencing the light. For the morning is like darkness to them. Surely they are familiar with the terror of darkness. They float on the surface of the water. Their sections of land is cursed, so that they never go to the vineyards. As dry ground in heat snatches away and melts snow, so Sheol steals those who have sinned. The womb forgets them. Worms feed on them. They are remembered no more. So justice is broken like a tree. They prey on the childless women who is unable to conceive, and they do not deal kindly with the widow. Yet God drags away the mighty by his power. When he rises up, they have no assurance of life. He gives them a sense of security so they can rely on it, but his eyes watches over them. He gives them a sense of security so they can rely on it, but his eyes watches over their ways. They are exalted for a moment, then they are gone. Then they are brought low and shrivel up like everything else. They wither like heads of grain. If this is not true, then who can prove me a liar and show that my speech is worthless? Now again, he is he's making the point from the wrong perspective. In other words, what he's saying is true. Except what he's not saying, what is not true is that God doesn't see. One, understand this. Every single person is guilty before God. And when God says about Job that he was the most righteous person, the Bible says like Noah was most righteous in his generation. That's a context we have to keep that in. And what it did not say is that Job was a person who was born again and did not have a sin nature. So when we measure ourselves in the light of God, okay, I'm thinking about like I'm looking up here towards my ring light here, right? You know, I'm gonna see if I can do this right quick. Like this lighting here, this lighting is I'm gonna see something. If I was to brighten this here as I'm doing now, right? Look how light is getting. See, I'm seeing things a little clearer now, isn't it? Right? Maybe I want to go back darker because then you won't see all of the. But see, the lighter it gets. Now I'm saying I'm doing this in a kind of silly way, but when we see ourselves through God's light, we know that God does not. His light is different. His standard is different. So you start with perfection. We miss that. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. One of the problems with Job here is that he's kind of measuring himself by his own kind of measurements. He's kind of saying, well, look at what I do. And you remember, in the beginning it said that. It said that Job was righteous and that God, he constantly tried to be right. Remember, he would, after the feasting that his children would do, he would purify them. He would offer sacrifices for them. Now, God gave him credit in the sense for his heart, but you could say, was that enough for him to be righteous in God's eyes? But he's looking at this now saying, look at all the stuff that I'm doing. Look at all the good things I'm doing. However, look at all the bad things that these guys are doing. And basically by saying that, look at all these bad things here, I'm better than them. This is where he's going to kind of step off and get wrong. And then he's going to say, well, how come God is not looking at them? Right? How come God is not looking at what they are doing? And that's always the mistake that we can make, trying to judge ourselves by anyone else except by God. And he's still not a bad person. It's just that attitudes-wise, sometimes we can get that, especially when we're suffering. When we're suffering, you know, like I say, when you're suffering, you feel like you're on an island. The world is still going on, but you're kind of caught right in the midst of your adversity. And this is where Job is at. Truthfully, as we're going to see, his adversity did not even last that long. I mean, the effect, think about it, it was only just a matter of a couple of days. That his adversity happened, and then, you know, the effect of it, about 9 months to a year. You can say that the kind of his suffering right there. All right, guys. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. See you next time.